Hi, my name is Tommy Abue. I'm a photographer and cinematographer, and today I just wanted to talk about the three main concepts that I really believe comprise a great piece of work. Whether it be a visual medium like painting, drawing, photography, film, or something more auditory, maybe you do sound design, or you just create music, you're a musician, artist. Whether you have a visual focused medium or a sound focused medium, I think this still applies. Um, I'm going to be using visual terms just because, I'm a photographer. That's where I learned it from. So, whether you do that or not, you can still apply these concepts for sure. And so, the first thing I wanted to talk about is the aesthetics, right? Your visual, your sound. These things is what's going to give you that hook. It's what's going to get your audience to look at your work rather than, just scrolling past it on social media or being like, oh, okay, whatever, and goes to the next thing, right? If you think about it in an essay form, it's literally your opening sentence, your hook. That's what this aesthetic, this visual style is going to provide for you. Imagine a song and then you listen to the first 15 seconds and it just sounds boring. It sounds like every other song. You're probably not going to listen to the song, You're just going to skip past it, go to the next thing, and in that sense, everything else is going to fail and it's not going to matter because, well, you didn't have a good enough hook to get that person to really, pay attention and listen. And so I think that's an importance of having, a good aesthetic. But the second thing is, you as an artist and your style and everything. Let's say you want to be like a classical painter, right? Well, before anything else even matters, you need to have the skills, the technical know how, and that creative eye just to be able to accomplish the look of a classical painting. And once you've gotten past that point where, okay, maybe you're doing this genre, you have to make your music even just sound like that genre in the first place. But past that point, how do you make that song, that film, that photograph? Okay, maybe it's street photography, maybe it's portraits. Well, guess what? There's a million other portrait photographers and street photographers out there. What's going to make your portraits and your street work look different than everyone else's work? What's going to make your song sound like your music and not just music from a genre? And I think, with a musical sense, you can rely on, like your voice, for example. But in a photographic sense, unless you're doing self portraiture, then, at the end of the day, a camera is a camera and you're going to have to rely on techniques, your style, composition, lighting, subject matter, things like that. And that's what's going to make your work look different than other people's work. And all of this falls under building this aesthetic that one is a good aesthetic, but then also two is your aesthetic. Because I think it's definitely easy to have something that looks good, but it's hard to have something that looks good while being unique to you. That's why you'll see like you're going through Instagram and you'll see all these like beautiful wedding photos and beautiful this, look at this nature photo, but especially in a corporate world, a lot of these photographs are just going to look the same. What's really going to make one stand out from the other when, they all look good and they're well done, but they just all blend in together, And that's where that visual style is going to be the hook above the rest. To be like, okay, pay attention to my work. And that's a really important thing about your aesthetic, your visual, your sound. You want it to look good so that they'll respect it and spend some time with it, but you also want it to be yours and unique, especially in, a bigger picture sense of you being an artist. You want to have a style that works. You want to have an art style that is you, but you also want it to be a good art style. And the difficulty there is having both at the same time. You might have a really unique style, but it's just not really a good style. Or maybe you have just a really good visual, but it's not super unique. And so being able to have both of those things is going to be difficult. And that's going to be the first thing that you're probably going to tackle and approach. And so the second concept I wanted to talk about is the narrative. So I really believe that the narrative is what's going to provide you that contextual depth and that journey that you're going to follow and go on to be, the details that you really pick up on and things like that that are going to give you the breadth of your work so it's not hollow and simple and very surface level. Because if you just have the visual, then, let's say you're taking a photograph of somebody holding a trophy up, right? Okay, maybe it's a great photo of a guy holding a trophy, but that's kind of it. And okay, next thing, right? But if you can really have like a solid narrative illustrated in your work, then you're going to go from, okay, this is a picture of a guy holding a trophy to, okay, maybe this person is fighting hard to earn this trophy, Maybe their face is bleeding and bruised, and the trophy has cracks in it, it's taped together. What do all of those things say? It goes from, okay, this is just a picture of a guy holding a trophy to this is a picture of a guy holding a trophy that's a hard fought victory. This person deserves it and earned it. And that's what the narrative's going to provide for you. It's going to take this very surface level, okay, this is a good image, to, oh, okay, this actually has a story, You're not going to watch a movie that has no narrative because then it's just eye candy, It's something that you could put on in the background. The narrative is what you really have to pay attention to and watch, and that's what you're going to communicate throughout the story. And I think this narrative is also important for the third topic, which is your emotion. And your emotion is what's going to be this lasting impact of your whole piece of work. Think about like a song you listened to 10 years ago, or a film that you saw so long ago you don't even remember when, or a photograph that you saw, but you remember every single little detail about it. And a lot of that is probably because you have built a connection to this thing. And most of the time, that connection is going to be emotion you felt. In an artistic sense, that emotion would be, okay, going to this example of the person holding the trophy, because this is a hard fought victory and because this person really earned it, and you can see this fight and this struggle, it's going to make you feel maybe determined, strong, motivated. And those things is what's going to make this piece of work last with you. Because otherwise, you're just going to go through and you're going to forget it. It's going to be like the picture you saw yesterday that you don't even remember, or maybe you watch a TV show, but it doesn't really make you feel anything. Then, you go through the entire season and you couldn't even tell me what, like, one episode was really about. And especially after a long distance of time, it's just going to be obscure, You can't really recite those things. I have a lot of films and photos and songs that, I've cried to. I've never, or I haven't seen them in a super long time, but I still can recount the movie. I can still tell you what the picture looks like. I can still sing the song. And that's where the emotion is very important in making your work have this lasting impact, to remember it, but also just to make it important, you know? Because maybe, okay, it looks really good and it has a good narrative, but you want this goal for your work for someone to feel something, you know? If you made someone laugh, someone cry, someone happy or mad, that's a good thing, you know? You won. You won in that sense. Just being able to elicit an emotion is such a powerful thing because it can move someone, it can change someone, it could save a life. And that's what's going to take your work from just a visual sense to, okay, well, now there's a story to follow, to, oh my God, like, wow, I really felt that, you know? And so that's why it's important to, have all three of those. And I think it definitely turns into like a hierarchy almost, of like a pyramid. You really need to focus on one before you can go to the next one. I think with this pyramid example, you have the visual at the very bottom, the visual, aesthetic, sound, whatever. And then you have the narrative. And then at the top, you have the emotion. And you really can't have one without the one below it and the one below that one. Because think about this, you could have such an amazing idea and concept. You could have such a good opportunity for there to be emotion, you know? But if you don't have a good aesthetic, no one's going to pay attention to it. It's going to ruin it, and it's going to bottleneck this value that you get out of, maybe this is a piece of work that's so important to you. It's the trauma you felt as a child. But if it just doesn't sound good, you're not going to listen to it. If it doesn't look good, you're just going to scroll past it. You're not really going to care about it. And so you really need to have that visual for you to care about it. And then if it's just narrative, then, how are you going to have that emotion? How are you going to have someone feel something if, that narrative isn't there? Because then it's like, what? This is just a picture of someone smiling at the camera. But if you have this narrative, then maybe just the fact that this person is smiling at a camera changes everything, right? And you're really only going to get that perspective and contextual depth through your narrative, through the details, the things that you put in. Are there scratches on the wall? Is the person beat up? Is the walls falling apart? Is it day, night? What does that say? Are there people yelling? Body language, things like that. And I think it's so crucial in that sense then to really be able to focus on one thing at a time before moving to the next one. And even just on an execution basis, like if you don't have one concept really good and solid and comfortable, how can you go to the next one then? Because then it's just going to end up being you try to do all three of them, and then you fall apart. None of them are really good. And so you really want to start, in my opinion, you really want to start with the visuals first, then move to the narrative, and then move to the emotion. And I think that's the best way to go about it, just because you really need that one before the next one. Because maybe you do have like good emotion, but think about how much the narrative could really amplify the emotion. And I think you can have that emotion, but if the narrative's not there, think about how much more emotion you could get out of a good narrative. And so that's an opportunity to take your work a notch up, right? So I think it's definitely best to start in that progression. For me, I learned the visuals first. I spent a lot of time just being like, okay, I just want this to be a really good photograph. Maybe it's like a leaf or something, and like it's just a leaf. Like, were you really going to care about it? But I spent a lot of time just making sure that I could get this photograph of, a leaf. So, in that sense, it's a really bad idea. Well, not bad, but just poor. It's not the greatest idea, right? It's not the most unique. So, you take this poor idea, but if you can execute it like perfectly and amazingly, then you can turn something that's just a basic poor idea into something great and amazing. And you could definitely do it vice versa. Think about like a film that maybe had such a big opportunity to be a good movie, but they just executed it poorly. And guess what? No one cares about it. It sucks. And so, definitely just understanding that concept that you can make a really mediocre thing, a really ordinary thing, be the best thing in the world. Or you could take such an amazing opportunity, idea, concept, and just ruin it. And a lot of that is just the importance of the visual and the narrative and the emotion. All of these three things are really in tandem, and you have to focus on one before the other so that you're not juggling everything. You really only want to move on to the next concept once you're like, okay, I can take an amazing photograph 90% of the time. Now let's just put my brain power to the next thing. And the final thing I want to end off on is okay, this is great. We have these three concepts, but it is really important to know that the struggle, what's going to be difficult, is having all three of them at the same time. I think it's really easy to have one or the other, but being able to maintain all three of them at the levels that they should be at, that is what's going to be so difficult. I'm still figuring that out. Personally, I have the visuals down, I have the emotion down, and I'm trying to figure out the narrative. And I've realized that my emotion isn't as much as what it could be because I don't have the narrative as strong. And so I learned the visual and then the emotion and then the narrative. But I think that's because I didn't understand this concept of the narrative. I just wanted to see something good and feel something good. But I didn't really understand that I want to have a story associated with my work. And so I think for you, if you're learning these concepts, I would definitely go with visual, then the narrative, and then the emotion just so you can get the best out of every single concept and the most out of it. And this is kind of a funny example, right? But thinking about when I would play Minecraft and I do like a bunch of building, you could probably see it on one of my other videos. But when I first started to learn how to build, I kind of built my houses inside of cliffs and inside of mountains and stuff. And that meant that I only had to make an interior and I didn't have to make an exterior, right? Because it's just in a cave. And it was a crutch in a way because I would focus so hard on making the inside look good that I just didn't know how to make the outside look good as well. And it's a balance that you really need to figure out, but you're not going to be able to know that balance until you know one, and then you know the other, and then you figure out how to have both. And so then I recognized that and I was like, okay, well, let's make houses that are exterior, and focus on the outside of the building. And guess what? I can make a great exterior, but then the inside of it just was terrible. I didn't give myself the room to make a good interior. And a lot of that is because I knew how to do one and I didn't really know how to do the other. But then once I got to the point where I did know how to make an interior and I did know how to make an exterior, well, now you have to put those things together and be able to have a balance where they can both exist without squashing out the other. And that definitely took my work to the next level in Minecraft, right? But even photographically, the way that I would elicit emotion made it really difficult to have a narrative. I would do a lot of more tighter shots, more studio work that you don't really see the background. It's just all black, all white. And, that's great for having a visual style and for having it personal to me and unique. But it was really difficult to have that narrative compared to, a photo that's outside and you see people walking on the street. You see it's raining. You see the puddles on the ground. All those things is narrative fidelity that's going to give you that contextual depth. And the way I made my emotion work was in detriment to the narrative. And so I've had to figure out very recently how to, okay, I have my visual, I have my emotion, but how can I also have the narrative and have all three of those three together? And that's what's going to be the hardest thing to figure out is how to have all three of them together. And I'm still figuring that out, so I don't have all the answers, but I think going back to that kind of funny example of Minecraft is you need to have one, then you need to have the other, then you need to learn how to make them coexist. And I think once you can really make those skills, techniques, and concepts comfortable, you know them fully, and you know how to do it in your way, in your voice, and your style, you're really going to take your work from being surface level to unique to just having that quality and depth. And you're going to take your work to the next level for sure if you think about those things. But that's all I wanted to talk about. I'm glad that you stuck through the video and watched it all. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.